Welcome to the Big Cats Women's Program 30th Anniversary Podcast. I'm your host Simone Wern, and over the next few episodes we'll be celebrating 30 years of women's baseball at the Springvale Lions Baseball Club. Join us as we share the stories and the moments that have helped shape our program and make it what it is today. This week for episode 6, we're excited to be joined by the mates, Chevy and Bito. We're taking a look back to the early 2000s when the two mates joined the Big Cats, and we're talking all things Div 1 and 2 as we reflect on the many years they've been part of both the on-field and off-field antics at the club. So come along and celebrate what has been a great 30 years full of memories and laughs. Let's get into it. Welcome, girls, episode 6 of our 30th anniversary podcast, Chevy and Bito. How you going?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for letting us in here.
Are we nervous? How are we feeling coming in? You've watched obviously a couple of episodes, and I think both of you have been enjoying listening to some of the stories and hearing the memories. How are you feeling coming in to tell your story, I suppose?
I'm excited. For me, it's been a good reminiscing, looking back at the years and listening to the previous podcasts about some of the things that maybe I hadn't thought of for a long time, and what am I going to share today? So it's been exciting.
It's going to be interesting to see what you pull up on us. I've sort of come and gone and been out for a little bit. So, it's been fantastic just listening in and remembering what a good place we're all in.
I think one of the really cool things has been stories that maybe even I've forgotten, particularly hearing from Ella and from Albie. It's been really interesting. But just reminiscing about some of the old times. I mean, we started, there was no social media, which I think is a blessing.
Thank God.
Now that we look back, it's a blessing for us. But, yeah, just all those memories that I suppose flood back. And I think no social media for us, probably a good thing. And Chevy will probably bring up a few photos of you. And none that Trent will be too concerned about, I don't think. But every pod's had a name, and I gave this one episode 6, the mates. I think really for you two, that's how you came to the club. You came as a pair. You came in, and I'm going to quiz you both on sort of when you came and how old you were and the story of how you both arrived. But I'm not sure many people would know your full names. They know you both. If you turn up to the club, either of you at any point, on a Saturday or a Sunday or any other day, it'd be Chevy and Bito.
Yeah.
Do people know your name, Bito?
Nah, absolutely not. There was one of the presentation nights where I think I was actually lucky enough to get an award, and they said Rebecca Strawn, and the boys' table went, who? They had no idea.
I've played here for 10 years.
Yeah, it had been a long time by then. So, nobody would know. Not many would know my name.
I love it. I want to go back to the beginning, and I've tried to do this with all the guests.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you both ended up, and I said you both ended up as mates turning up together, but what brought you to the club to start with, and can you remember how old you were at the time?
I'd had a period of time off from playing, and I wanted to come back to baseball, and I rang up a few clubs in the area. So I rang Bomb Beach, Berwick at the time because it was a winter, and Berwick were the only ones to have rung me back. And I don't know whether it was Annie I spoke to or Mandy in the end, but I was told Mandy was part of the club. And there were a couple that I knew, and I was encouraged to come down. So when it was time, I said to Beck, why don't you come with me? That way I don't have to go on my own, as big and brave as we are. So we started at Berwick in the winter season. What year?
I reckon I was 20. Because we met at uni games when I was 19 for the first time through Monash, and playing uni softball. So
what year was that, Bito?
It's been 2000, I think, because I didn't play my first year of uni, so that was 99. So 2000, we played softball together.
And then I was the next winter, so we played uni games, and then she recruited me to come down, and so from a softballer playing summer softball to winter baseball, and it was a bit of a change. And winter baseball sucks. It's so cold and wet.
Still does. Still does, but now it's our bodies. Well, mine. I think Chevy's the same. Can't cope with trying to get warm in winter and get the old body working. So nothing's changed. But I love this photo. I brought this photo up. You guys haven't seen Shay's podcast yet, but I brought it up because I think this is a really cool photo, as blurry as it is, of so Megumi was out here for our first premiership, 2004, 2005, 2005, 2006. Was she here?
4-5?
4-5.
Was she here 4-5?
Because I was away 5-6.
Oh, no.
Well, it was 2005 either
Yeah.
way, and Megumi was here, but a really cool photo of, and back we've had obviously Shay, Kat and Ella, and now you guys. We're just missing Paula and Megumi. We might get Megumi on in January, but when you look at that photo, tell me, does it bring back any memories, or what do you remember of that time being right at the beginning?
It was just fun. Everything, and I know everybody said it, but that's why I've enjoyed listening to all the podcasts so far. But everything was just fun. The joy of playing with, hanging out with your mates, and having a hit. That was the hit in the game was probably secondary to the social. But yeah, everyone got sort of focused when it was time to be on the field. But that was probably a hard slog to switch the brain sometimes to the focus mode. But everyone really got on well too, so it was great.
Yeah.
I think it's different. Obviously, each player plays for different reasons, and it didn't matter. So for me, winning, okay, not that I don't care if we win or lose, but I invest differently to some of our other players that like the statistics and everything else. But the minute I go on the field, I play hard because I know the other players want that win and all that sort of stuff. So I want to help contribute and make their success. So even from the beginning. And it's fun. I had a ball on the field, and the support from the team. If you made a mistake, didn't matter, and it was a place that I loved to go. And I still love to go since I'm still there. Yeah, and just the photos are great because we've played with so many players over the time, and the enjoyment's still the same regardless of who's on the field. So it's been great.
Yeah, well said. There's a few things we're going to touch on. Of course, the agenda that is fueled by your structure, and one thing that I've learnt from you over many years is making sure that you've got some things in place to be efficient and be organised. So I thank you for that, Chev. We're going to talk about the mateship, and you already said baseball was probably secondary for both of you. We're going to come back to some of the great things that you've both done as part of the club and maybe outside the club, but it's really been about the mateship for you two more so than anything, and the social side of it. The road to now, I think you've been on the journey together, but then you weren't always, and there's sort of been a different road for both of you. So we're going to look at that. That premiership, we've looked at that premiership in a few instances with Kat and Ella, and then with Albie looking at her Div 3 premiership. We're going to look at that premiership, but it's times two because there's a couple of different ones I want to highlight with you guys. Chevy, we're going to talk to you about the best seat in the house because you've had it. You've sat behind the dish and had some of the best that the club's ever seen on the pitcher's mound. So you've been able to see the game, I suppose, from the best view, although it's probably not great on your knees. And then some photos, and we're going to do our little quiz at the end, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with now. But we're going to kick it off and talk about the mates. And I did try to be kind with the photos that I found, but even if you start, and I've been sort of stalking people's Facebook pages and having a great old time looking at the photos. Of course, on the left there, we had some great years there. Vicky B's on the left. You got Barky in that photo, Kel Wolf, and then obviously one of your best mates on the right there, Kat. And I know Kat spoke about your friendship, Chev, and I'm sure you'll touch on it too. But the mateships and the people that you guys have created friendships with and you still hang out with outside of baseball now, is how important's that been in your life? Forget Springvale Baseball Club, forget the Big Cats, forget the anniversary, but in your lives. I mean, Bito, I know you're a little bit further removed now, but you still catch up with those girls and
we still do a Christmas catch up.
Absolutely.
And it's just that it's grown because now there's partners and kids and everything like that.
We had dinner the other night with Rossi, so
We've over the years.
Be
we've
good
had
if she
trips
returned
away.
my messages, by the way.
She's busy,
just
maybe
to-
not at the moment. She's
Yeah.
got a bit more time.
Yeah.
But no, phenomenal. Like it's just, and especially for me, like I was overseas for a lot, and it was almost like where in the world is Bito for quite a few years. And I'd message you, and you're like, "What are you up to now?" But I could come back and forth to the club and the group, and just was instantly back to normal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, which is one of the cool things. Like you could disappear and you have for years at a time, but you turn up and it's like, hey, Bito,
yes,
what's happening?
even
How are
now,
you?"
even though there's a lot of new people to me,
Yeah.
and they've been part of the club for years now too, but there's a lot of new people to me, but
Yeah.
there's still sort of 20-30% that I used to play with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I remember that photo. That was at the Bay Hotel in Morty Alley. That was a great night out. There were lots of fun times. And look, for me, obviously, when I first started, you know, Bito and I came together, and then she decided she wanted to travel the world and up and left. And, you know, I think six years.
almost 5.
Oh, there you go. 5.
Yeah.
5 years overseas. But I suppose the best part about our friendship is, you know, I got to go overseas, travel with her for 6 weeks, and you know that was, you know, some of the best times ever. But then, you know, and there's lots of other photos that go with this. It doesn't matter what year it was, and particularly our earlier days, we'd go out heaps after games and on the weekends, and it wouldn't matter who you're with. So when like Barkey came and played, you know, she was more than happy to come out every night with us. But over the years, it hasn't changed, you know, and I suppose that's the best part.
Yeah.
And having the opportunity partway through when we had the Berwick team and then we came back to Springvale, and I made the choice to play in the Division 2 at that stage because even though I knew I could play Division 1, I wanted to play with Beck.
Yeah.
And I wanted to play with Cal, and they weren't in the Division 1 team, and Rossi. So for me, I stepped down to find a little bit more passion back into the game, playing with my mates, and you know, had a great experience. I know we're going to talk about that later. And then obviously after that, finding that passion again to come back and play in the ones again. That's part of, you know, having your mates that you can do that and feel free and welcome to move between the teams like that.
I'm going to quiz you on Kel Wolf or Kel Reid now, but before I do, you owe me, Bito, and I've never mentioned this, and it's been a long time. You probably owe me dinner, but I spent quite a lot of time. I'm not sure what year it was, but I moved in with Chevs at her dad's place, and she said to me one night, we were sitting in front of the TV, and she said, "I'm going to see Bito, but I've got this problem. I need to drink beer, and I hate it, but I've got no money. What am I going to do?" I said, "Well, we're going to have to drink beer." She's like, "Well, how do we it's gross. We don't like it." So we went on a few pub crawls, and I think the first one was down the Princess Highway.
Yep,
What
down the Princess
pub
Highway.
was it?
Yep.
I can't remember the name of the pub, but it was Princess Highway, like Elston Wiki type area.
Yep.
And we got one pot of Vic Bitter, I think it was, and we drank like one mouthful. I'm like, this is going to be a hard slog. We committed,
Yeah.
and I helped. This is one of my claims to fame in life.
You helped.
I helped
drink
Chevy learn to drink beer,
Yep.
and then she came on your trip, and I think she probably did a
I
great
think
job.
we did very well.
So you're welcome,
Thank you. Yeah.
and I'll take that dinner sometime.
I will say that it's probably Chevy's bank balance that thanks you even more because drinking in the UK at that point on Aussie dollar,
Yeah.
you might as well just sign the mortgage because we definitely gave a few pubs a nudge over there,
Yeah, the snake bites on the first night, I think was the biggest challenge. I wasn't very well after day one.
especially when your luggage hadn't arrived.
Oh,
And I had to deck her out in a few of my clothes, and we did a bit of last minute shopping because we were taking off the next day and hoping for the best for the clothing to arrive.
Oh, dear.
I do remember learning to drink beer, and every Friday after school we had staff drinks, and I'd have one beer, and it struggled out. But after a couple of weeks, got better.
Yep. Yep.
I did the same process in uni days. You couldn't be an engineer that can't drink beer. So I know your pain and passion.
This podcast we drink responsibly here, and
Absolutely.
we encourage responsible drinking, just to confirm. Hey, Kel Wolf, Kel Reid, she's been mentioned here or there on the pod, but some of my, I want to say favourite, but some of my funniest memories involve Kel, and I still go out to have my warm-up throw on the right field line, and I like to pick a specific area where I throw that has a fence in front of it, because she used to have these real issues. And I'm somewhat blaming Mick for her erratic throwing, because he used to give it to her pretty regularly. But tell me your memories of Kel and playing with Kel. She played in Div 1 and 2, but she was a big part of the club for a long time. What are your memories of the baseball and the social side with Kel?
I think the funniest time, and this wasn't at Springvale, was when she played right field in the Victorian team with us, and the ball went out, and I think were you on the hill?
Yes,
on
I
the
was
hill?
pitching, yeah.
Yep. And the ball went out to right field, and we're like, cool, Kel's got it. And it pretty much she had her glove out, and it went straight past her glove, straight into her leg. And we were in hysterics.
I felt bad because I was laughing on the field.
That was probably one of the funniest. And look, you know what? Kelly's been great to play with. She'd go off the field, have a bundy on the side because she needed that, bit of relaxing before she could play. But hysterical, great to play with. But obviously at the end of the game, you felt sorry for her, because unless you were standing beside Mick, you were a kicking post, and Kelly seemed to be the kicking post for a long time. And we joke about it. But yeah, look, she's great, and you can ring her any time, and it's fun.
She was pretty thick-skinned, I mean, I knew that there came a point where she just was trying to choose different positions to stand, and we were trying to sort of shadow.
It was like a laser focus.
Yeah,
and
but he found her. He found her.
Yep.
What do you remember, Bito?
Look, I have a really terrible memory when it comes to the field. I can play a game, or back in the days, play a game and walk off and not know what I did for the game. So I'm the one not to ask these questions, but it was definitely the, especially towards the later years when the body sort of started getting a little bit more achy, and it was like was it the Finelgan or something, the deep heat type. And I remember just load everybody's body up with that just to get through a game, and there might have been a cheeky drink before, or a anti-inflammatory or something like that. So definitely in the later years in the Divvy 2s was just like, all right, let's get the body ready, we play hard, and then a beverage afterwards.
Love it. Mandy's still got the deep heat happening, just by the way. You speak of responsible drinking, and you're allowed to have a couple of quiet drinks after a grand final. So these are two of the more responsible photos I found. Chevy, yep, that's responsible for you, but this is back in the heyday. You're lucky to make it to midnight now. I think last year I was impressed. You got to about 11.
Yep.
And you left, but that's a night, and we've got Albie there. Albie obviously was always a great time back at the club after a grand final. And then obviously Bito on the right there, we're going to talk about this grand final a little bit later, but a pretty significant moment. You probably don't remember. You said your memory's not great, but you played a pretty pivotal role in that team. Yeah. Even though you weren't necessarily one of the star players, but
you just chip away at it.
In that team, and in particular in that grand final, you had a big impact and helped us get the win. So we'll come back to that. But again, having a couple of quiet drinks and celebrating and hanging out with your mates, I think has been something that, if you ask me to talk about you two, that's what I'd talk about. And I think that's pretty awesome. I had to bring this up because this is a few people have mentioned this to me, whether it's been on the air or off, that you are famous for the old school Calcutta night horse racing machine. Yep. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah. And every year I'm disappointed we don't have that machine. I've got my great uncle. I reckon if we had something, I could give him give him a job, and I reckon he could make us one, because I'd be keen to get that going again.
Yeah,
not just because I kept winning.
I have memories of you wanting to, you're like, I'm going to take this out again this year. And then I remember the year Barky was there and she had the leather jacket and her boobs were in the way and her thing was getting caught in it. But yeah, great memories of Calcutta. Yeah. Again, hanging out with mates and
the jealousy of everybody with the table for the platters. We do platters well, our Tupperware containers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you can see I'm winning in the photo, just anyone that can't see that.
Good to point out. And this is a shout out to Mick to bring back the horse racing machine. There might be some legalities around that now of what you can and can't, how you can.
It's all a donation. That's the thing. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, find me
Might
that
be some
machine and I'll get it fixed.
OH&S issues, but we'll get Mick onto that and maybe give your uncle a project.
Yep.
The road to now, and I mentioned briefly before, the road to now has been a little bit different. And Chevy, we'll start with you, and you're still here. So you went through, you talked about that Div 2 premiership, which I know was really important to you, and it was an amazing game in the history of our club. One of the best grand finals will always be that one. It's not even, we talk a lot about the Div 1 and that Div 3 one with Albi, but that Div 2 premiership is one of the greatest victories the club's had in the women's program. But you're still going, and you and I have this conversation most years now where we're pretty honest with each other, and we usually say, like, you message, you're like, do you reckon I can still play Div 1? Like, would you tell me? I was like, yeah, do you reckon you're like, yeah, we'll go again. And here we are all these years later, and the body's doing their best to hang in there. And I think the last couple of years, there's been a few games where we've both, I might not play for a week or two here just because I probably could, but if I do, I might break for good. And we're probably a bit more responsible, a little bit.
It had to happen at some point.
I mean, it's a work in progress.
At least you're just listening to your body.
It's a
I
work
wouldn't
in
change
progress.
responsibility, just listening.
But tell me about that. I mean, you've. I think this is a really interesting one for me because you've never been the best player. You've just been the most consistent player I think that we've had. I mean, Shay hits 600 or, all these players of whatever, but you've just been this consistent contributor for so long, and it's hard to consistently contribute. Like, how fun has it been for you to go through all these phases but still be out there and still be able to contribute?
I suppose 2 shoulder operations in, 2 kids in. Each year has got harder, and I suppose when you said to me, we need you to catch again, and I was like, I haven't caught since before I had my kids. Sure, I'm sure it'll be fine. Look, it was really hard at the start, particularly since I've done nothing for the whole off-season. Last year was a little bit easier because I realised that I couldn't do 6 months of nothing and that I needed to do something. And Trent's on my case, have you done your shoulder exercises? And he says that to me yesterday, and I'm like, I'll start. How long have I got? A month? So, look, the body has been better. It's pretty good each week in and out at the moment. Compared to obviously when I was younger, everything just seemed flexible and everything compared to now. Look, I don't need the deep heat or anything like that. But in terms of being able to get out there, for me, it's really important. Having 2 kids and wanting to role model to them that, I can still play. And while I can still play, it's important that for me, I want to still play so that they see that and hopefully that they, then participate in sport. So I suppose that's one of the biggest things that's driving me, and I love playing. So while I can still play, I want to play, and, everybody keeps reminding me, I think, that I am in my 40s now and playing. But, last year was a big surprise to me, when you spoke after the grand final to say that I hit in the top 10. I was like, wow. So for those little things that I get back, those little rewards, I suppose, to sort of say that, I am still playing in Division 1 and have had 2 kids and, had all those, I suppose, little challenges along the way, that, yes, I am more responsible with my body to make sure that if something's not right, that I will have that extra week off. It is tough, but I'm enjoying doing it, and it's working. So, yeah.
And you've seen, like, this, and we're going to talk about your catching later, but you've seen this array of different players. I mean, you played with the Ellas and when Kat was in her, prime and one of the best and playing for Australia, and you played with Kelmanzi, and you've had all these imports. Like, what's it been like getting to play with some of those players and be around them?
Do you know what? I feel really, really lucky. I feel lucky, and I know this is probably going on to your best seat in the house side of things, but, being a catcher at the club for such a long time, I've caught to, so many Australian pitches that it's funny. I feel like almost when I catch to somebody that hasn't played at that level, I'm like, oh, this is a bit strange. I've been lucky, and when I have caught to you, to Ella, to Kel, to Kat, I've caught to Bron now. You know, I've caught to, you know, 6, 7 of the best pitches this country's produced, if not more. So, you know, it's been good though because everybody pitches here. Yeah, and
That's probably the reason your knees are holding up, isn't it? You haven't had to
You're
move.
welcome.
I haven't had to move, you know. But I suppose the relationship you develop with those pitches too, and, you know, catching to you for so long, or even to Kat, you know how the ball moves and how far it's going to move, and it makes the job easier. And that comes to, you know, I feel really privileged that I've had that opportunity to catch and you know, not only catch to those people, but also play in those teams. You know, Shay's pitched, but obviously having her on the field, or Rissa or Arbe, you know, all that sort of stuff, having so many great players.
Yeah.
You know, there's not many people around that can say they've played with that many great players. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been
Absolutely.
a real privilege.
Yeah, very cool. Bito, you said you don't have, you know, from a memory point of view, maybe a little light on for memories. And we've talked about the mateships and the social side, but I think to a degree, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but baseball was still important to you, and there was still something for you that was important on a Saturday. To turn up. And there's a couple of photos here, and the one on the left is from that premiership that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
And the other one's out at Geelong when we played game 1 of the season after the Berwick-Springvale experiment, and you were playing in the Pumas team, and we went on to win that grand final. So that's another story for later. But tell me what baseball meant to you. What, you know, and you haven't played for a few years, and we spoke about you coming in and out, but what was the game like to you back then?
Oh, look, the social was one thing. I always tried to play hard. I wasn't the best player, and I had a lot of work in the early days with Billy Ray and Mick and Greg to change my swing and learn to throw properly and stuff like that. And it was a great way to challenge yourself. I've got memories of running poles and trying to get fitter, and like the punishment poles when you drop the fly ball or things like that, and the sort of the laughs about running like you're towing a fridge and stuff. But in terms of the batting, the fielding, you always give it your all. I've played pretty much every position over the years. I might have pitched once, and then that was just like, no, keep going. You stay back out in the field. But that was great. You're sort of working to, and Chevy's done it more so than me, but working to hit different sides and control the ball a bit more to become a bit more strategic was I like that side of it too. Yeah. So
yeah, awesome. The road to now, I said the road to now has been a bit different, and you can see in that photo on the right that I made sure the ball was in shot. Chevy, it's just on the left-hand side of that photo because I picked that.
I was going to say, did you pick it?
I'm pretty proud of that pick. There was a runner on third then, they would have scored. Sorry about that. But on the left, so road to now is different. So, of course, the Berwick-Springvale experiment, and clearly I was playing for Berwick, Chevy, you were playing for Springvale, but at that time, Bito, you were playing in the twos, and sometimes we forget to talk about specific teams, but you were playing in the twos. You obviously had Mick and Stu coaching, but I think that was the first year that Sloane came over. Mm-hmm. You had EJ Tobias, Kel, Crystal Pikes in that photo. Pretty cool little team.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun that year. Yeah. I think to some extent the pressure was off a bit, and especially for Cal and I, sort of being the older ones of the team and stuff. Just sort of we could do what we want and encourage everyone, and a lot of rotation, and Stu and Mick probably put up with a lot with that year and that team, and
I feel like the focus that year was all the Berwick Springvale and all these, there was a lot of there's stuff going on here and there, but I think that team almost got forgotten about a little bit, and that was probably good because you could just sort of go and play. Yep. And I think, if you spoke to Sloane and even Esther, so Esther sent me a message a couple of days ago and said,
"I was
coming."
She got a mention the other week.
Yeah, she said, "I'm coming to the reunion thing, and I can't wait." She's like, "I know I wasn't the best player, but I love the club," and hearing from players like that who just love their experience and
the encouragement from everyone on the bench and that side of things. We all have your ups and downs, but everyone was like, yeah, great job, come on. Let's
And that's been something so cool about this too, is that 90% of our players never played, 95, never played for Australia, never. It's the club environment that's so amazing. It doesn't matter which team you played for or how long you played for, but there was a place for people here, and there still is.
Yep.
And then obviously Chevy and Ella, Kat and I talked a bit about it, and Shay and I talked a bit about it on her podcast. But obviously the Berwick Springvale experiment was an interesting time, and I think we've all agreed it probably had to happen for a few different reasons. And I remember you took, because we were still mates at the time, still mates now, but we were sort of we were still pretty good mates at the time. And you said to me pretty bluntly, you said, "Well, why is this happening? And why? Who's deciding who plays on which team?" And I think in the end the discussion was, well, Shay and I are best mates, so we're going to play in that team. And you and Kat, you guys are over here, so you're going to play in that team, and that's just how it's going to work. And I'm not sure you were overly thrilled at the time, but I think looking back, we're all here because of that happening. And I don't think if that hadn't have happened, we might not have been. What are your memories of that time? Was that difficult, or how did you sort of find your way through that?
It was
period?
really difficult. I remember a meeting in the Berwick club rooms, sitting on chairs and discussing it. And I think that was the time, I think that was at the end of it, when we were deciding about coming back and where we were going to play and what it was going to look like after the first season. And, you know, Kat and I were really good mates. But that's when Bito was playing in the twos, and I sort of thought I'd lost my passion. And I suppose maybe it was when that happened that it was very unsettling. Yeah. So that's when I made the decision to go and play in the twos afterwards, to try and have fun. And if it meant that I had to play in the twos to have that enjoyment and not have the level of competition, that I was prepared to do that, because I needed to find that fun again in the game. And so, that's when I made the decision to go back to the twos after that. And then a year later,
we changed it.
We changed again, and then I came back to the ones. That was late in the season when you went and played in the twos in place of me. We swapped. But you're right. I think, ultimately maybe that was a good decision to trial it, and something had to change, and, positives have come out of it. So
yeah. And I think that's the key to everyone who's been on here, even Shay, who's most competitive of anyone that we've ever played with or had at the club. But it's the fun, the element of fun. And if you need to find that again, you could do that. Mandy, I think, said she's played in every team. And, I've had injuries, obviously, but gone and played in other teams and coached other teams. And I've got great memories of that. Like, I love the competitiveness of the ones, but I think finding the fun is so critical. And it's really cool that you're still having fun all these years later, and you wouldn't play if you weren't. Bito, you briefly mentioned Billy.
Yeah.
And this photo was taken. So these photos are taken on the same day.
Yep.
So Billy had come to watch that game, and he was in the car park out the back, and the four of us ran out and had this photo taken with him. And I know he's been discussed quite a bit, but I know he was important for you when you were training and stuff. And you said you played hard. So one of my great memories of you is that, you maybe weren't at the level of some of the other players, but if I said, hey, Bito, we need you to do this, you would just absolutely give it 100%, and you played hard. So you had Bill, you had Greg, you had Nick and a few other people, but what was that period like, and what are your memories of Billy Ray?
Oh, look, just the encouragement and enthusiasm of Bill to teach you to be a better player was second to none. The first thing he was like, we got to change your swing and back to the tee. And like for certain people, it'd be such almost a degrading type aspect of going back to basics. And you feel like you're like a kid again learning to play T-ball. But, geez, I needed it at times. But even now, I think that's the best thing that everyone in the team and the club recognises, that sometimes you've got to go back to basics to just reinforce the swings and the right throws. And Billy with his little hand on the glove, and you snap the crocodile, or whatever was the saying back then, of just sort of, setting up those routines to get you through and get you in the right mindset. But I spent a lot of time with Bill at the start, working how to swing the bat. Like everything was just different to softball.
Yeah.
And Chevy always given me hell for my little toothpick of a bat because it was long and light and it worked for me, so that was fine. But yeah, it was really just great that somebody would invest so much of their time into you and your development, and then you can just see the grin, like the fact that he really got joy out of watching us improve, and and when we succeeded, he was like, it was good he was there. So.
Yeah, he loved it. I'm so glad he got to that game. He hadn't been well before that, but he got there, and I think that helped. We're going to talk about it, so I'm not going to say anything now, but I think for me, and still being at the club, Bito, it's so cool hearing you talk about that and hearing the other girls, because that culture now exists. Like, we go to training and people are doing drills and people are at stations and people are working on mechanics and all of that. This isn't because it's 2024 and it's a bit of a fad now to do drills and go on YouTube.
Yep.
That was instilled in us 25 years ago, and we're still doing it. They're just slightly different drills, some of them. Yeah. But I love that that's something he's laid the foundation
Legacy.
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just pretty cool. We'll come back to your premiership, but that's a pretty cool looking, that trophy
it's a bit of bling.
Is in our cabinet because it's defunct now, doesn't exist.
We'll take it.
We own that one.
Yeah.
Before we talk about those premierships though, just really briefly, Chev, I mean, you have moved into coaching, and when I say moved into coaching, you've done quite a bit of coaching now. In a head coach role, an assistant coach role, and then obviously doing stuff at training with the girls. But what's that been like? You've been obviously Mrs. Taylor, then Mrs. Stevenson, teacher lady at work, but coming to the club and being able to coach a variety of different skill levels and different types of people. Tell me about that experience.
I think my first real, I suppose, coaching role was when I think it was you and Bron spoke to me about coaching at the state youth team. And I hadn't really thought much about it because I've been very big, obviously, in my job, teaching all day, that when I get to training, I just want to train. I don't want to think about anything. It's the me time. And when I went away and coached the youth team with Urs, I had a ball. It was really good, and I think finding somebody that you enjoy coaching with, that you work well with, makes that coaching role easier. And when I had both my kids, when I was pregnant with both of them, obviously I wasn't able to play. So getting to base coach, like, that was one of the funnest times. I couldn't play, but I was out there, 30-something weeks pregnant, standing at third base, rounding people around, and you still feel part of it. So I get, coming back and doing that role, you still feel well and truly part of the team. Coaching now, obviously, with you and Kat and other people that are involved with it, it's good. I find that even though we've got players that have sometimes better skills or whatever it is, I still feel like I've got some knowledge to impart to them, or just different things, or showing them different ways that the same thing can be done, or just little things like that. So I enjoy being able to share that. Getting part of the decision making sort of process to how that works.
The other thing I think you mentioned Kat and coaching with Kat, and we had Kat on, and she obviously spoke. She's loved being back and that role where she's learning and she wants to be able to help the team, and she gets so much out of it herself. But for me, her coming back has been, this sort of OG player who was around back in the day when the game was probably quite different, across the board, not just at our club. And she has all these things and all this experience at a time where the game was pretty challenging and it was pretty hard, and people worked really hard. And she's come back into the fold, and I think she's really imparting her experience and insights. And I think the girls needed that. They needed a different voice. How have you found, A, having those things come back, but B, how have you enjoyed having your mate back?
She'd ring me every week anyway and say, how'd you go? Did they win? Did you win? How'd you play?
It was always good when Chevy was in an away game because you knew you had a good hour to chat. Because she'd ring Kat, she'd ring me, get the update, what bruises has she got this week and stuff like that.
I think that's the best part. That even when they're not playing, and Kat was the same. That I'm in the car on my own. That's the best time to ring people.
Yeah.
That I still have that chat, and with Kat ringing me every game and wanting to know stats and who did this and who pitched. So when she rang me and said, "Oh, what do you think about me coming back and coaching?" I was like, "Are you going to play?" And she goes, "No." And I go, "Oh, yeah, cool." And she still rings me. She rang me yesterday, and she just wants to chat, and what gossip you got for me? Thinking that in winter I'm going to have anything, but it's good because what I've enjoyed most about coming back to coaching, and last year, the four of us that coached across, I suppose, Division 1 and 2, is it's not one person making decision. It's four people involved in decision making, and it means you get different opinions. And Kat will have some random idea that she thinks will work, and
you can politely say no or yes or whatever.
Yeah, or somebody will say to me, "Oh no, you say no to Simone. You say it because she'll listen to you." And I go, "Oh, okay." But I think
that is true.
Chevy's been your voice of reason for many years.
That is true.
And I think that's the thing about coaching, that when you get the right group of people together in the mix, that you're happy to say what you think, and you listen to, and then you discuss it, and then it still might not work out the way you wanted it to, but that's part of coaching. And Kat asks questions. She wants to learn too, and we all make mistakes in our coaching and things like that, but that's part of the learning process. And I think the four, last year in particular, being able to do that and have a team of coaches has been really good.
Yeah. It's a really good thing that you brought that up, because one of the things we talk about, growing and becoming very old but wise and learning a few lessons. I think one of the great things for us as a group is that we can have conversations now and that we maybe articulate things a little differently, and so they're received a little differently, but it's basically open slather. So there's no silly ideas here. And we know we need to potentially do things differently. So I love that Kat's very open in the fact that she's still learning about coaching. So, hey, what do you think about this? And then if we say, hey, well, actually you wouldn't do that because of this, she goes, oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, what about this? And it leads to other questions and other inquiry, and none of us are offended. We just go, isn't it cool that Kat's on a Tuesday morning at 6:30 when she's on her way to cut someone's grass, she's thinking about how the team might perform better? I think that's really cool. And I love I think the more collaborators and opinions and ideas lead you to potentially better outcomes. So I think it's been a great little system, and I think you played a big role in that, and your calmness that you deliver is excellent. I think you're a lot calmer at baseball than you are at work.
I've mellowed since having kids. Some days.
Very cool. Well, we love having you still coaching, Chev. That premiership, before I get on to that premiership and I look at a few, I have brought this up a couple of times, and of course you two are in this. It's a pretty cool photo, and I don't think of course it's a photo from a photo on my phone because it's from so many years ago.
Because we've got a few years under the belt.
Do you guys have any memories of this? I mean, Chevy, it'd be great to hear your memories, because I know there's a really clear one, and potentially the listeners would like to hear this story. We talk about it often. It gets mentioned every year. But can you tell people the story about a little bit about the year before and then this year and what happened?
Oh, the year before. Okay, we'll start with the year before. And then I hope I've got the right year. Beck and I were talking about it before, so I hope so. So the year before we won our first grand final, we played Port Melbourne in the grand final. Paul Carthy, he was umpiring.
Hi, Paul. Shout out to Paul.
Mate.
Yeah. And I can't remember how many people were on base. I think it was bases loaded. 2 out, and I come up to hit, and I'd fouled off, I don't know, about
knowing
8,
you,
9.
probably a dozen.
8 or 9 balls or whatever. It was full count, and I foul another one off, and I foul another one off. And the next pitch comes, and I think it's outside, and I'm like, cool. And he goes strike 3, and I'm like, oh my god, game's over, we lost. Yeah, so that was my memory of that grand final. And then
that was 03-04.
Right.
Our first grand final in Div 1.
Right. Thanks, last out for the game. Yep. And a little bit scarred. And anyone that knows me from when I started playing, I could only ever hit the ball to the left side. Pulling the ball, no matter how hard I tried. So the following season, Greg had sort of said to me, let's work together and we'll we'll start hitting right side. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so every Tuesday we were in the cage early hitting right side. And, you know, I wasn't a fan of tee work, especially hitting, 100 and something balls off the tee every Tuesday. And I worked hard at it, and, he was a great help. And it came to the grand final, and I remember, I don't know what the score was, don't know any innings, nothing. And I remember we were playing Doncaster, and the coach of Doncaster, I don't know who it was, I think it was Dom, did a big shift. And basically the right fielder, I think it was Urs at the time playing right field, was moved all the way across to basically centre field. So the three outfielders were at left field, left centre, and centre field. And Kat says to me before I go up to bat, she goes, they're throwing outside, get ready to go with it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've never hit a ball right side. Okay, I'm ready. And I went up to bat thinking, right side. And I managed to hit it right side, and basically it curls around and bounces just inside the foul line and rolls all the way to the corner at Altona. And I run out at triple, and I'm like, oh my God, Greg, look at me. I hit right side.
So hang on, you hit the ball to right field and you ran to third.
And I ran to third. I was a little bit faster those days, a little bit faster.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, so that was my biggest, I'm assuming that's that game, yep.
Correct. And that's one of the greatest memories of that first grand final was that. And it wasn't that. It was the fact that the year before you had that strikeout, and I know what it feels like to go through stuff like that, and it does scar you, and you think about it, and then you got the winter to think about it, and then you're like, what am I going to do? And I remember turning up to training, and you were in that cage, and Greg, I must say, tip my cap to Greg, because he took a lot of time out of his own time to go and help you. So, but that's a great moment in our history, and I'm sure a great moment.
Yeah, it's certainly when, and I've watched the podcast and you've asked, for those favourite on-field moments. That I have two. That's one of my favourite moments, just, the first time hitting, and it was in that game. And, now I can hit to right field and I can pull the ball still. So, it's developed my game, and certainly I owe that to Greg in, teaching me how to hit to the right side.
Very cool. Any other memories from the first grand final?
I get all my games blurred, but I remember at one point, and I was probably following up you, of having a hit of my own, sort of decent hit that actually ended up winning a game, but I can't remember if it was this one or one of the others. So,
well, remembering a hit's good.
Yeah.
Getting a hit's good.
I hit the ball more than once in my playing time. Don't worry, I remember that part. But yeah, no, it was just the joy at that one was everyone was definitely energised.
It's a very good photo.
Yeah.
This one, little bit blurrier, but this photo I had to bring up, and of course this is that premiership and you've talked about finding that passion, Chev, and going back, and I believe, if I am correct, that you actually finished this game on the pitching mound, which in itself is sounds quite amusing, but you got the win in the end. And I'm going to ask you for your thoughts on this season and this game, both of you, but I had one of my biggest coaching moral dilemmas this day, because I was very close. It was Waverley.
Yeah.
Very close game. I was coaching. I'd done an ACL. I couldn't play. I was coaching the ones. And I remember walking past the dugout, and Kelly Wolfe came running out, and she said, Wig, I've got a problem. I need your help. And I said, what is it? She goes, I need a Bundy. I need a can of Bundy. I need it. I know I'm not going to play well.
She got it.
You're going to have to get it for me. And I said, what do you mean? I can't get you alcohol. Well, there's a game. Like, it's the second inning. She's like, please, you've got to do it. I know I can contribute, but I need the Bundy to calm my nerves. So I spent the next, hour. Do I get the Bundy? Do I not get the Bundy? What do I do?
Jeez, you made her sweat.
I didn't get it.
Oh.
I didn't get her the Bundy.
She had one every game up
and
to
guess
that.
what?
Yeah.
Guess what? You won.
Yeah.
So
I can't say it was necessarily just because you didn't get her a Bundy that week.
I'm claiming.
There was a lot going
I'm claiming
on.
it. Tell me about it.
You can, because as I
I
said,
can't remember. That season, Rhiannon Smith, and I don't know, I caught the first 7 innings of that game, and I can't guarantee you who pitched, if it was the whole 7 innings Rhiannon pitched, or if EJ pitched.
I feel like EJ had a pitch at some
Can't remember, so apologies to Rhiannon and EJ if I have it wrong. But Rhiannon had played so well that year, and it's funny because sometimes playing with younger players can be annoying. But I'd had such a great time this season. I'd really enjoyed it, and playing with my mates, and it didn't matter what role you were playing. Every week we got there, and it was just fun. And I remember this game, and I'm catching away, and it was so close, and it's a draw or whatever. And I think I might have thrown 1 or 2 innings during the season, just here or there, aiming for a strike. And then we played the 7 innings and it's a draw, and then we come in and Mick goes, "You're in." And I go, "Oh, okay." And so Kelly's come from, she was in centre field, so she came from centre field to catch, and Janine went out to centre field, and I thought, okay, well, only thing I can do is throw straight down the middle because I can't throw anything else. So I pitched it. I think the first hit went straight out to Janine. Yep, catch. And I'm like, oh, cool, this is all right.
This is easy.
I can do this.
Yeah. And then I think Jenna tried to bunt and popped it up, and I took that catch, and then it went to, and so I pitched the 8th innings, and then it went to a 9th innings as well. And I remember when I first came off and Mick said, "You're in," I think it was Camo and I was going to call him Cosmo, Maddie, that were on the side, and they're like, "You're pitching?" I go, "Yep, I'm in." So, I think a few of the crowd were a little bit surprised, and, then I threw the 9th innings and we ended up getting the out and then I don't know who scored the run, but we scored the run and we won that grand final. And I think the game went excessively long because obviously it went to the extra innings, and unfortunately the Division 1 team then lost after us.
Because it went over.
I remember talking
it stuffed up your warm-ups.
I talked to Kat a little bit about it, and she goes, "I was exhausted before our game." She said just all the cheering and just how exciting
and
that
we
game
were going
was.
nuts, like out the back.
Yeah, so that game there, and I remember, I think it was Pete Matters that actually umpired that game. He came and gave me the game ball at the end of the game and congratulated me and things like that. That's one of my best memories playing that game, and it's not very often you'll hear me say that I got to pitch a game and won a grand final pitching. It was huge.
Mick still talks about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you had obviously him and Stu, but he still talks about that time we beat Waverley, and Waverley were a Div 2 sort of powerhouse for a few years there, and obviously we had some good players. Clearly you were playing in the team, but obviously had some younger ones and some players who were sort of finding their way at that time. So it was a pretty big win, and that's the first time we'd won Division 2, I believe.
I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was too.
I think that was where there was so much excitement and investment from the crowd in it too, because it was that close.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, "Oh, hang on, can we get this?"
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
Yeah.
Finish the game on the mound, Chev. And then the other one I wanted to show, and I sort of mentioned this briefly, and you told me your memory's not great, Bito, but you're in the front there with the shield, the defunct shield that's now in our trophy cabinet at the club rooms.
Yeah.
That game, I'm not sure
Where
what
is
you
that
remember
one?
of it. We
That's at
played
Malvern.
at Malvern against Doncaster.
Yep.
We were the Springvale Pumas. Obviously, we had Tay playing in that team. She'd had a fantastic season.
Yep.
But that game, we were... Don't worry, this happens every podcast. That game, we were losing, and we went into the last inning down, and Doncaster were basically going to win. I think we had 7, 8 and 9 up, and you were one of those hitters.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to look at who's in that team. So I believe it was you, Shelley and Sloane hitting at the bottom of the order, and somehow you all got on and we won.
Rabbits out of our hats.
Yep. and it's, if you talk about wins coming out of nowhere, and games where we were down and out, and to be honest, there hasn't been that many. Like we've won and it's been pretty dominant or convincing, but that one was we were down and out. 7th inning all over pretty much, and our 7, 8 and 9 got on, and obviously then Shay comes up and Huffy comes up and Rissa comes up. And we won the game. And it's, I think, one of the most famous victories we've had. Do you have any memories of that time, and in particular like getting to play with Rissa, and because you'd played in different teams, in the twos and in the ones, but you played with your mates, but then you came into this team and sort of removed a little bit from your
from the
traditional friendship group.
Yep.
But what was this experience like for you?
I've only sort of really got vague memories because all of it just blurs because it was
Blurs into one.
It was just fun. Like it didn't matter who I was playing with. I could have friends in any team, any club, whatever. I have probably recollections of playing with Cass, a lot of just someone that just full of energy, just chips away, nothing phases her. Sloon, it's sort of always give a bit of cheek to and stuff like that. Especially some of the nighttime antics and things.
She still cops it.
Yeah, Shelley was great value. Like the game itself, I know that it was a team that sort of everyone just did their bit, and it didn't matter what level you were. Your bit was you put in to whatever skill you had, and it was the one that sort of as you said, like a 7, 8, 9 to come up and just all get on base. It doesn't always happen that way, and it was sort of always like that sort of joke of Spanger 9. Well, sometimes Spanger 9 pulled. They were there for actually a reason. Yeah. Because it's set up also ready for 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's no point just having someone that might go out because you want people on the base ready to load them in. So, it was good. Obviously, seeing Huffy there with her shaved head, shaved for a cure and everything. It was, and Gabs. Like, I look back and I go, it's actually a really long time ago now.
Oh, it is.
And you go, there's been a lot of great people to play with.
Yeah, for sure. Just we've touched on it. You've touched on it briefly, Chev, but you have had the best seat in the house, and despite the soreness in the knees as you move into your, I don't want to say mid-40s. Well, you kind of are in your you're moving towards 45 pretty quick.
Just as quick as you.
a touch quicker. But you've had the best seat in the house. You've had some of, the best pitches going around. But what's it been like for you to, you talked about the different, I suppose, Australian pitches, but like last season, I'm not sure I've seen a more dominant player in the league for a number of years, or if ever, in Sourgummy and what she did. Talk us through your memories of the pitches and being able to catch them, but also last season in particular, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on Sourgummy and how she went.
It's funny because when we have imports here, sometimes their English is excellent. Like Riss's English is excellent. Megumi always says to you her English is no good, but it's excellent. And I remember the first couple of weeks of Sawa, and and I'm calling pitches. She's throwing it, and I'm thinking, something's wrong here. And I go out, and I'm like, I'm calling this, and she says, oh, no, this. And I'm like, so for however many weeks I was calling something that, obviously was not what it was.
Yep.
I love it.
And, Sawa threw amazing. Her change-up, we were trying to get going and things like that, but she'd hit the spot all the time, and I suppose that's the best thing. And if she missed it, it was still a good spot where she missed it and things. So the best part is when those players come out, and like I said, the relationship that you get to develop with those players, and you get to go out there and you get to talk to them. And sometimes like this, I look like a giant next to Kelly Manzi. I remember that game and going out there and asking her what on earth she was doing, because she couldn't throw a strike. That was at Melbourne,
wasn't it?
Yeah, she couldn't throw a strike to save her life that day, which for me, I was like, what are you doing? Because
is that the game that Vic started? Kel came in and then I came in? Yeah.
Yep. And, for Kelly, normally she just gets up there and just throws it in. It's always a strike. So I was like, what are you doing up there? And obviously, she just struggled that game, which was a random, once in her lifetime. But, Kelly she's a very quiet player for those that know. But she'd just get up there and go about it. And, for the lefty, you'd get up there.
There's no warm-up or anything. It was just like, oh, yeah.
Just roll it over.
Yeah. and I'd get up there, but I've always got to remember lefty, so everything tails the opposite way. So... Yeah. But same thing, I'd be calling the game and, she'd just nod every single time, never shake me off. And, compared to you who, shakes me off for every single pitch and then just decides what she's pitching and I don't know what's coming. But, and I suppose that's a relationship that it doesn't matter because I've caught for so long too that, I know how the ball's going to move or what direction it's going to go.
And it's not coming quickly, so...
but then, I've been able to catch DeGab who's, been up and coming with her pitching and... You know, Rhiannon Smith, like I said, I've got to a number of players at different levels, and you know, Hannah's the same. You know, coming in as a lefty, you know, it doesn't matter. Nicole Garner, she's pitched to me. Like I said, Bron, and you know, so I feel very privileged to have caught and be from that position that you get to see everything on the field, and you get to see how things operate, and you know,
And yell at us all.
oh look,
Line up for home. And
everybody knows that these days I'm a bit older. I don't run up the line anymore to first base. I just rely on the fact that everyone in our field's going to throw it on the full and it's going to be caught. But, you know, gone are those days where I had to worry about running up the line, and, you know, you've got the reliability of players, but, you know, everybody's listening, and having the best seat in the house, you also develop that, like I said, that relationship with the umpires. And I think that sort of helps as well in terms of, you know, Paul Carthy's been around for, well, obviously, since that first grand final, I remember. But, you know, Janine, who's umpiring as well, and you get to talk to the umpires, and then I'm learning, you know, still this season there was one game where nothing was getting called, and so I had to adjust my catching to then, you know, get the calls and things. So I suppose, like I said, catching to all that range, that huge range of players. You know, it's helping me with catching, and I know there's so many things that are changing with catching, and you know, obviously the way I'm sitting there is not how you see many catchers sitting these days. But that's how my legs work. I might pop a hip if I have a leg out, so that's just how it's going to stay. But I've really enjoyed, like, if you ask me my favourite position, it's that. Like, I do like playing first base, but catching, because you're involved in the game every single play. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. One of the great things about you, and I think the love of the game is still there, and one of the reasons is because you're still trying to get, like, I feel like something similar with us is we're trying to get better. Like, we don't just go to stuff around, and our time's really important and precious. Like, we obviously got families at home and there's other things to do, and so when you're there, you want to get the most out of your time, but there's an element of me still trying to figure out how I can get better and how I can learn. And of course, older, body works differently, so there's different ways we can produce. But the thing I love about you the most, catching, is that you're just honest. You know, in
sometimes
this,
you probably didn't want to hear it.
But in this day and age, Bito, it's really rare that, you know, there's a lot of catchers out there who sort of just sit there and let you do whatever you want. But the reality is that you see everything, and you've got so much knowledge that, you know, still now you'll come out and say, what is that? Just don't even throw that. That's just crap. And pitchers need to hear that, and pitchers need feedback. It's not, oh, you do whatever you want, and, you know, if there's a pitch I'm not calling and I keep shaking off, you'll come out and go, what? They just hit a double off that. What are you doing? Oh, okay. You know, and I think that honesty and the bluntness, some of the kids are still a bit, oh, Chevy's a bit scary. I'm like, Chevy's not scary. She's telling you the truth.
Yeah.
So you either want the truth or go to someone who's not going to help you get better. And that's a credit to you to be able to, and I think you do it in the right way, and people know you're trying to help. Like, I know you're not trying to make me feel crap about myself. You're trying to help me be better. It's a real credit to you, and you still do it.
Yeah, I know.
And really, you can turn up and
you go, where did that miss? And I go, oh, well, it was actually outside. It wasn't a strike. And you're like, oh.
Like, Chevy, that was fat. And you're like, actually, it wasn't. Shut up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Best seat in the house. Very lucky until you have to deal with paying for bills for your knee injuries. Some photos I picked out of the archives, and I was kind here too. But of course, Chevy with your mates on the left there, winning some trophies, and you've won a few of those over your time. And then the samurai stuff, like so long ago that I think we haven't forgotten about it, but it doesn't get, you know, raised a lot. But that's Rissa when she first came out with Team Samurai. Do you have any memories of back in those days, or what do you remember about that
I've
period?
still got my red shorts from the Samurais too. They don't fit, but I've still got them. One day.
Maybe the kids can wear them.
Yeah, maybe. That was great. I remember, you know, obviously the team coming out and playing and us getting to play with them. And it's just a different challenge because the Japanese, obviously, they have such a passion for the game and how they go about it and just seeing that happen. And I remember, I don't know if it was the first year, but they had a player come out that was javelin thrower too. So I got to, on the top diamond, go and do some javelin throwing with one of their players as well.
Yep. Stop there. So for those who don't know, Chevy was big-time javelin thrower back in the day. To give everyone a bit of insight into that. So before you were a baseballer, you were a javelin thrower.
So I played all my junior baseball, but at one point I went across and was doing some javelin because at school I seemed to be okay at it. So I was, doing athletics for Sandringham and throwing on a Saturday and then playing on a Saturday, and sometimes that worked well. And I'm sure when we come up to mixed music, I can give you an example of when it didn't work well. But yeah, so I did the javelin and then had my first shoulder operation, and then after that I've thrown a bit more. I've been at athletics training today, so I'm in a bit more of a coaching role. I do enjoy still throwing it, still beat the kids and things like that at athletics training, so it makes me feel good. So that's been another real passion of mine, the athletics, the javelin throwing, and now, and it was great because I could combine the two passions together, being at baseball and throwing it. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. And I thought this was cool because it's like this comparison between the Chevy who love to have a couple of quiet drinks and have a bit of fun, and of course the clown on the left
got a
with
beer in hand.
Yeah.
I know. You're welcome again. And then on the right, of course, your family are such a big part of, and I've mentioned this on a podcast previously when Ella and Kat were in, of how cool it is that you come to baseball and your kids and your awesome hubby Trent are so supportive. Not only do they support what you do, but they're pretty immersed in it. They're on the field after the games, throwing balls around, and we're kicking footies and or doing crafts inside with Charlotte. And here is one of our ex-players who's going to be on the pod in a couple of weeks, Nicole Garner, with some excellent colours on. But the two contrasts, you're still there and you're enjoying yourself, but now it's a family thing and you can combine the two. Less beer, more water, but it's still a really fun place for you to go, whether which hat you've got on, family hat, the Chevy fun hat, whatever. What's that like?
When I had Charlotte and came back, I remember one of the first games was out at Footscray, and Trent has just been amazing in supporting me and saying, oh, yep, if you want to play, yep, we'll just make it work, and so he'd come to the games and he'd have Charlotte on the side, and I remember being out on the diamond and I can hear her crying, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how on earth am I going to play? And I'm listening to this and I've had no sleep and everything else, but he'd just make it work. And, then Reese comes along and same thing, I'd come down on my own so I could come down, warm up, and then he'd bring them down and pack them all up, and, a million different things you need to bring with you for two kids.
Yeah.
But they love it. They love coming down. And I think I was looking through the photos last night, and the first final we won after I'd had Charlotte, I don't actually have any game photos, but I've got a photo of Charlotte the next day at home eating the medal.
Oh,
photos.
She would have been tiny.
Yeah. I've got some really good photos of the kids
Awesome.
with my medals after the game. And not last year because they weren't there at last year's grand final, of this year's grand final. They were at the footy.
They're watching the Mighty Hawks, though, so it's okay.
But the year before, when we were on the field at Altona, I've got a really great picture of the two of them and me holding the cup. And so it's good. I'm getting to share those memories with the kids, and they're there supporting it and cheering and yelling out for a wave, no matter whether I'm catching or
I love the whole
running.
Hi, Mummy.
Yeah. So it's great, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without obviously Trent, and Mum comes down, every week. So I suppose I'm really lucky in that instance. I tell my kids when I'm teaching that I'm still playing. I've got my mum comes to watch, my husband, my kids, my sister and her son. Like it's great. They're happy to come. They love coming to the club. Everybody knows them. Yeah. So that real family feel, and and it's enabled me to play. Or having Jeanette on the sideline where I say, I've got Charlotte with me today. Can you do some craft with her so I can play? Having those parents, so Hanami's mum, Lily's dad, and Jeanette, they help me be able to play. So that's been really important.
Yeah, and we can't, we've mentioned Trent a few times. We can't mention him enough. He's just been such a great support, and it's really cool because he's so easy to be around. And he's he's about to inherit a 2-year-old on a Saturday probably soon, which I know he's probably already quietly looking forward to. But good luck, Trent.
It's like every time I come back, it's like the creche just got bigger. There's another kid this time and that, and I'm like,
if he's charged per hour, he'd cover his
cover
his drinks.
I think Charlotte will be happy to help.
I'm already preparing to give her some pocket money. Bito, I couldn't do a podcast and not bring this up. I mean, you
Yeah.
can forget all the memories you want as you know, move away from the club and do other things. And it's not the best photo of me, but I had to bring up Old Faithful.
Yeah.
And Old Faithful on the left there is the OG warm-up top. And we don't even wear those warm-up tops anymore. But if we were going to, yours is probably white by now, is it?
It's getting there. I was actually looking for it for today, but it will come to the 30th because it still
fantastic.
exists. It is definitely the whiter shade of navy. But hey, good quality stuff lasts, and the sponsors of the day, and I know it always gets you a
Celic
giggle.
recoating on
Yep.
the arm
Yep.
there. Have you do you remember where that game was? You won't.
Ooh, with
So
the
that
water
was-
park in the back.
That was game 1 of that season where we won that premiership at Geelong. We played at Geelong.
Okay. Yep.
And that was the first game. So
I do remember some car trips with
Yeah.
everybody going to some of the away games and Werribee and Yeah.
God,
It was always
we travel further now than we ever have, don't we?
Footscray
For
and
the
stuff. It
games
was,
we
yeah.
play.
You just made me think of that time we went to, I think, was it DBA? And you wanted me to pull over to go to the toilet.
Ah, Wagga.
Yeah, Wagga.
Yeah.
There's no pulling over. 'cause
No.
Then we'd be stuck behind more
I
cars.
Kept
do remember
threatening I was
that.
going to have to put the window down.
I got great memories of that trip, but I'm not saying them on this podcast because they're
yeah.
not for
Consumption.
Yep, not for consumption here. The sort of last one, Bito, for you is that final again at Malvern. I've just spotted actually in the background there, Sinead Flanagan is is
in the
watching.
grey. Yep.
Grey. She was still playing for Malvern back then, and now we're here all these years later. She's been at the club for more than 10 years. So isn't that time flies when you're having fun? But I love this photo, and there's been a couple of these photos I've shown because I just think, as you said, and you've already sort of articulated this, but that team I don't think had like the best players or the best roster of players, but we had this team of people who just got stuff done.
Yeah.
I think Shelley probably wouldn't be mentioned in the realms of other players from her skill level, but that year she trained so hard, and I think she saw an opportunity. She's like, I want to contribute here. I don't want to be that player who's just sort of there.
Yeah. Yep.
And her, and I know Sloane as well.
There was definitely those opportunities in that team to
Yeah.
sort of work yourself up to being one of the better players
Yeah.
in that group and actually really sort of then help lead.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it was good. My other memory just at Malvern was when he had that hailstorm and we were training and we are all doing our warm-ups and the sky just turned and almighty. It was like quick. Everyone's like putting the batting helmets on to run
Yeah.
back to the dugout, and then it was like, whose car's got damaged? Mine
Yeah.
Mine got written off and had cellulite.
Really? Both of yours?
Yep.
Yeah,
Really?
mine basically, I bought it back, but it was like it had cellulite because it was just
Oh my
hail dints
goodness.
everywhere. And yeah,
I remember that day because the game got called and they said, you're playing next
Next
week.
week.
And Barkey said, oh, I'm unavailable.
Yeah.
It's my biggest memory of that. And luckily, we still knocked you off.
Yeah.
We won't go into that. And I've brought the photo on the left up a couple of times, Chevy, but obviously you've been a big part of the program for a very long time. And even when you had kids and you played in the twos, you've coached, you've played in the ones, you've won a couple of Bill Ray medals, you've sort of done it all, and you've been around the traps for a long time. That photo was obviously a few years ago, and then the one on the right, I don't know how you were able to jump up at your age after catching.
That was the thought of a drink afterwards.
Yeah,
and
probably.
And the fact that I don't have to squat anymore.
Well, and the reason I showed this photo too is because, and obviously I played in this game as well, and I did not play well at all. It's probably one of my worst games for several years. But the joy of still winning, like it's not like we've won, and we've won quite a lot now, and now we just turn up and it's sort of just, oh yeah. We still love to win and we love to play and we love the group that we get to play with every year, even though it's slightly different. And I love this photo because it's, you still love it. And that's why we do it, because we love it. But, that first photo pretty much 20 years ago, that Div 1 premiership, to now, and there's still the love that you have when you get to win with your mates. So, they're all different and they're all exciting in their own way, but I wanted to bring up that photo and just show you. Good memories.
Yeah. Look, notice how everybody else from the field's already there and I'm just joining. Taking my, and then I thought, I better run for the last bit and just jump on everybody.
You're
for a
excited
change.
when you got there. That's all that
Yeah.
matters. We're doing a little quiz, and you would have heard this now in all the others, but a few sort of memories, and if you have them, you tell us. If you don't, Bito, that's okay. We might be able to help you. But your favourite on-field memories, and you said you've had two. We mentioned one. What was the other one?
No, they were the two, hitting to the
okay.
right side and then obviously
And
that
then
grand
the
final.
pitching. Yeah.
Yep.
Bito?
No, I've gone. It was always the reason we kept coming back for so many years was because it was fun and there was always something to work on and try to do better, and it didn't matter which team. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't have one specific memory. The grand finals, of course, are always good, and then even just coming back and watching you guys year after year.
I think one of my, I'm going to add a recent one because when I was looking through photos last night just to jog my memory, I am older and my arm is not what it used to be. And being able to catch and, throw Abby Kelly out at second base and, Sammy Deeble, for me, that was, I suppose, an achievement. Purely because, you don't see me throw it all the way now. We've talked about skipping it through and, this year it worked. And, so I feel like I can get you out at two now. So it stops runners from running. And, for me, that was a big thing, throwing out an Australian player. Yeah. At 43 years of age and 2 kids.
That's a great photo. I should have put that on here. I think it's actually great that everyone's struggled to answer this because there's so many and because it's been so much fun.
Yeah.
And I love that that's sort of the answer. Off-field, again, probably similar. There's a lot of them, but...
I think Albie did a great job last week when she reeled off all the pubs that we've been at. Look, it wouldn't have mattered what night we went out. I think one of the funniest nights... and I think it was Albie, when we'd been at Crown and we stayed in the city and then we had to play the next day and somebody was sick out the car on the freeway on the way home.
Yep, I remember that. On Westall Road, corner of Westall Road and Princess Highway.
Yeah, they're some of the funniest ones. And I think that's just because we were all out together. So it didn't matter which night it was, the fact that, it was different combinations of us, but every time we were out, over 28s at Chelsea Heights or whether it was at the Cove or those photos from the Bay earlier, they were some of the greatest off-field moments. And then the Calcutta night and things, some of those nights at the club. Just spending time with your mates.
Yeah.
I think all the pubs and that gave me a few giggles when you go, we really did go out a lot and everything and that, but I'm pretty sure it was Ella's Hens where we had a mini bus and going into the Elephant and the Wheelbarrow and just saw the carnage there, and then there's been all the weddings and stuff since and things. And
that's a name that I don't... Did Albie mention the Elephant? That was on our list.
So, but that was was relatively frequent.
Albie, you missed one on your list of pubs.
Yeah.
I think she put time into that too.
The grand final celebrations, or whether you won or lost to the club, was always entertaining. There's no way I'd want to sleep on the floor now like we used to.
Oh,
and
God.
Phillip Island, I remember going down and the training down there and then going out to the Isle of Wight at that stage.
Yeah.
I miss those days being able to go and, have a weekend away. Or the other one we went to, did we go to Albury?
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember Gabby there in her swimming outfit, in the pool.
Did Danica go to Albury with you guys? Because didn't you? What was the stealing of some clubs?
Oh no, Danica did come with us. Yeah, she came on the end of season trip. The end of season trip and the Club X story. Yeah. We can't tell that on air either, but some great memories of those trips.
Yeah, so
don't ask that question again, Beck.
Danica the stand-in strawn while I was overseas.
Don't ask that again. Yep. But she came on the road trip with us. Actually, that was a great road trip. But we'll try and get Squeak on at some point. Favourite teammate.
Chevy. No, it just it was always good to first off to be roped in to come in to play baseball, and then just get to spend every weekend and Tuesday nights and that with Chevy. Our life it was busy and we're working through careers and the early days and that sort of thing, but it was just we caught up all the time, and it's a little bit harder now. We have to plan ahead, sometimes a month in advance with our calendars, but we make it work. And
Yeah.
it was always good. But we had such a good group.
Our Tuesday nights hasn't changed. I just go to training and then I ring Beck on my way home because she's on the train on the way home from the city.
Yeah.
So it still
Nice.
works.
Love that.
Favourite teammate, it's funny because I've been pondering this one. It's hard because I've played with so many players for so long. How do you name who's your favourite? Obviously, you know, for me it is probably Kat. We've played together in the state team. We've played together, you know, at Springvale for a long time. I've courted to her for a long time. So you get that relationship. Obviously, I like playing
I was going
with
to say,
Bito.
geez.
You have to say the person sitting next to you, surely.
You know, that's my favourite mate, not necessarily teammate. So in
yeah.
terms of that,
I'm not in
like,
the team now. You're let off.
that's it. Thanks. But, you know, I enjoyed playing with Kelly Manzi for a long time because, you know, her and I had such a good relationship and, you know, again, it's another pitcher and, you know, infielder and things like that. So they're probably the people I've enjoyed playing with the most. But, you know, if you picked out individual seasons, then you'd have a favourite teammate for that season.
Yeah.
And again, like the on-field memories, it's I think that is cool too. Like if someone said to me and someone flipped it to me and asked, like, there's no way I could answer it because there's just so many and there's so many cool things you could say. But I think you guys have nailed the answer to that one. The best player, again, it's very hard. But if there's any memories of who you think are the best players you played with, what would they be?
Everyone's going to say, a lot of people would say Shay for her dedication and continual, just the way she plays, the skills and always uplifting. We've honestly got so many players that are top notch, and that was the thing. I wasn't the best, but I could play the ones at times when the mind and body played together nicely. You play the ones and you're just like, okay, I'm happy to be one of the worst players in this team because the standard is just incredible.
Yeah.
It was all relative to who you were playing with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Mine would be you, not Shay. Sorry, Shay. Purely because it wouldn't matter what you'd done, how you do it, you get up there and you throw a strike. And you throw it where I call it. Where I put my glove is where the ball goes. And that's great as a
So
catcher.
it's because I've helped your knees.
But just in terms of that, like, obviously it's no secret you're not the world's best number one hitter.
Ouch.
But in terms of if you need to make contact or we need a bunt to go down, you get the bunt, that sort of stuff. So every player's got their own areas that they're great at, but you're there every week. You're there working hard. You've pitched at a high level. You throw all these different pitches. You're still working on it. You've had a huge injury. Yeah, to me, you'd be the best player that I've played with over the time.
Oh, thanks, Chev. That's very kind. And I think, as I said earlier, one of the cool things about you and that I love about you is you're still trying to get better and you push me. So a big part of that is thanks to you, I guess. So thank you. Funniest person at the club. I know already the answer, but tell me.
I think Kat, but
I was going to say Kat.
Yeah, like in the combinations, Kelly Wolf and her together or Shay and her together.
Yeah. Yeah,
just hilarious. And it's sometimes it's not even that they're doing funny things or saying funny things. Like sometimes I wouldn't want to sit next to Kat on the bench because we'd come off and we'd be sitting there and something will happen and she'd just go whack into my leg, like just absolutely punch it because she was so excited that something was happening and then something wouldn't go right.
Yeah.
And then obviously there'd be a few expletives and everything else. But it was just funny because of the passion and everything. But obviously there's been lots of nights out and for us that's probably where some of those funniest things have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the photos you had was Shelley, and she was definitely a very entertaining player for that year.
Yeah.
Always kept us laughing. So
she's had a few votes already. So has Kat, and I think Kel as well. Everyone would agree. Favourite coach?
I think I'd give it to Mick in that he just pushed and wanted the best out of you, and he was up front many times and sort of told you what you needed to hear, but for somebody to give that much time and effort is, awesome.
Mine is Greg, but I'm going to say Greg and Mick together.
Yeah, the double act.
Yeah.
Greg was the good cop, Mick was the bad cop. But the amount of time Greg put into, obviously, my hitting and stuff, but Mick's been amazing over so many years, and even now I'm sure if I rang him and said, can you come and hit some fungo at training, he'd come down and hit fungo at training. And it's funny because I've seen two different sides to Mick. So when you play in the ones, obviously you're there because you want to play, and he wants you to win and play as hard as you can. But when he came and when we played in the twos, and I remember we were having conversations about getting married and trying on wedding dresses, and he's like, "Oh my god!" And we're in there and we're trying to we were hitting, and he says, "Oh my god, would you hurry up and go out? My horse is about to race." He's got the radio on. Wouldn't have mattered what you did, any errors you made in the twos. He was just a completely different coach. So it was great to see different sides.
Yeah.
But you knew what to expect from him, and you knew that he wanted you to play it the best that you could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And as we have done every week, and I'm hoping you guys have, I'm a little disappointed in the answers to this question. I think they've been a bit broad, but I'm hoping there's a memory in particular where you remember something, Chev, and I'm hopeful. I think you hinted at it earlier, but something that you remember, and we hear the...
There was a lot of yelling at me the day that this happened. It was at Port Melbourne, and I was playing third base. And, I got my first play. And at this stage, I was still doing the javelin. And so this probably is a prime example of how it didn't work. I picked up the ball and I was sort of lost my release point because they were a little bit different. So I've thrown this ball into the ground at the first baseman, and it went past, so the runner's safe. And Mick's getting a bit shitty on the sideline. Sorry, expletive. And then I get another play and, made another error. And he's at the sideline, he's yelling, "Throw the ball!" And I'm like, oh, and that's making me even worse at third base. And I remember the next one I picked up and I thought, all right, throw the ball. And it went sailing well and truly.
Under the footy ground next door, I remember that.
Well and truly over. And I remember it coming off. And, at the end of the game, I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got to stand beside him because he's just going to rip me a new one. And he told me it was the worst thing he'd ever seen and that I would never play third base ever again. So... For me, that's certainly the circus music for Mick that day, and it was directed well and truly at me. Nice to say, I've played third base since. Not under Mick, but he pitched me after that.
Oh, I love it.
That was it made me think, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't play this game anymore after being yelled at that day. But he certainly gives you that resilience to then come back and be better after that. I didn't play third base again that year, but yeah.
The same game, just to make you feel better, I hit a pop-up and didn't run it out to first, and he benched me. So, there you go.
Wasn't the best game.
Yeah.
Bito?
For me, one of the funnier moments as I've been thinking back was probably my second or third year at the club was at uni, and I worked out that I needed glasses. And I finally got my glasses, and I wore them for this game, and I'd been catching at the point up until then, and having a bit of a rough season, and I wore my glasses under the mask, and I had a blinder. And Mick's like, for fuck's sake. I'm sorry.
Language warning.
He's like, if I knew you couldn't see anything, I would have bought them for you years ago. It was just this instant turnaround of like, yeah, okay.
Oh, that's excellent.
Maybe, so
that's
he
fantastic.
definitely didn't let me live that one down for a little bit.
I think the other time he certainly, and look, I've heard it on him from the sideline now that he's not coaching. Sometimes he does it in the crowd. But I think usually it happens when we've had a rundown play.
Yes.
That there's been a few rundown plays that haven't gone our way, or there's been excessive number of throws, and then there's a extra base that the runner gets as a result of it. Yeah. Usually he certainly brings out the music, and then that's what we're doing at training the next week.
Yeah.
Love it. Anything else you guys want to say? We sort of come to the end, and we'll remind everyone about our 31st of Jan function to RSVP, but any other thoughts before we finish up?
I'd just say that the best thing about Springvale was always the volunteers. Like as a club, and I'm sure every baseball club's got their same thing, but whether it was fundraising for Barkey Day, I'm pretty sure the pink hat I just showed was a breast cancer fundraiser, all the grants and pulling together everyone's skills. And you'd ring me up and go, oh, can you help me get approval for this or permits or what do we need? And just making the club in every way better was just what made it such a good environment. Like I was out of the house for like 7+ hours every Saturday from the warm-ups and twos to watching the ones to having a few drinks with everyone afterwards. It was just great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely the environment, and back in those days, all the girls were at the boys' game and the boys were at the girls' game, and you knew everybody. You knew every single player that was there, and, and it doesn't matter, like I went the other week, during the season, I was down there for something else, and then Matty Hale walks past because his kid's playing, and it was just like, oh, blast from the past, and, stop and have a great chat, and when we see the canteen, it's a way of catching up with those people, those people that are in the canteen, like Richo coming in the canteen and haven't seen him for a while. So, yeah, it was a great place to be. And, it's great when you see the people that you haven't seen for a while around the club. So I'm looking forward to to both those functions to see some of those players that we haven't seen for a while, because, it's still a great place to be, and the family that's involved, and, yeah.
Yeah.
One other memory, it was I think it was a final, and it was Kat pitching, and it was a pop-up straight up to Kat, and she's like, I can't see it, and then she goes at the last second and caught it. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, that was
pop-up incidents over the years.
That was one that was caught, so that was a positive one. But
Love
otherwise, look, it's great to listen to the different podcasts over the week, and the different memories people have, and it just jogs some memories you haven't thought of for a long time.
Yeah, awesome.
So thank
It's
you.
been great to have you guys. Thank you for taking the time and coming in. Get to the function. I'm sure you'll both be there.
Yep.
And I really hope Trent's there so he can share in some of the memories and stuff and have a few drinks with us too. But a big thank you for both of you for what you've contributed and what you still contribute. Chev and Bito, we'll see you there next year at a game.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
No worries.
Thanks,
you.
you.
Okay.